I'm here in Brussels today as all the nations of the European Union gather to grapple issues relating to the very future and survival of the European Union as we know it today. Now, of course, there's been much talked about Brexit, but the reality check is rather different from the kind of speeches that we hear. For example, one of the main problems with a so-called no deal Brexit, even though many in the UK say such a thing would be horrible, ghastly and should never happen, and many in the European Union the same, but the really big problem is a border that can't be closed. Yes, it really just can't be closed, and it's between Ireland and the north of Ireland, Ulster, which is part of and it's between Ireland and the north of Ireland, which is called Ulster, part of the UK. Now, a lot's been read about that, a lot's been spoken about it, but this is the truth. The truth is that that border is over 300 miles long and impossible to police. Even at the height of all the terrorist activities of the IRA, it was very, very difficult for the British government working with the Irish government to prevent arms and anything else, in fact, going across that border. That border has never been closed in human history. It would require a wall of steel equivalent to the Iron Curtain to close it properly, and I promise you, there is no government now or at any time in the future in either the Republic of Ireland or the United Kingdom that would countenance such a thing, nor could they afford it. So what's going to happen is this: if there is a no deal, or if there's a bad deal which only allows tax-free products of certain types to go across, but the rest is taxed heavily, you'll just see a mountainous smuggling operation happening across that border, and there will be very little that any government will be willing to do to stop it. Now, that means that the fence that is around the European Union as a whole, which is the basis of the European Union in a way, it's free trade within a zone, it's restricted and it's privileged. You have all kinds of rules and regulations to follow if you want to be part of the free trade zone, but if you follow that, you can move your goods and your services and your people across borders. Now, that completely breaks down if people are moving across the UK-Ireland border, in other words, from the UK in and out of the European Union as often and as easily as they want, and the other way round, and goods and services likewise. So what happens then? Well, you can be sure what's going to happen then is that there's a mighty problem in Brussels as to how to reconstruct an integral wall, which isn't broken, around the whole of the European Union. And by the time they phoned the Prime Minister of Ireland and threatened various things, and he said, well, what can I do? There's no way I can close it. I'm doing what we can, but it's very difficult. The UK is not going to cooperate anyway because we're already out of the European Union. So what can Brussels do? Well, the only thing that Brussels could do in that situation would be very drastic, which would be to say, well, in that case, we'll have to throw a ring of steel around the European Union, which excludes the Republic of Ireland. Because what's in the Republic of Ireland is now, from the trade point of view, contaminated with goods that have probably not been taxed appropriately as they've wandered their way from some other country through some port in the UK, then they've crossed the border between the north of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and then suddenly they're in the European Union. We've got to stop this. So they will then, the logic is that they will then impose a trade barrier, which means that whatever comes from the Republic of Ireland to any other European country by ship or by air will be taxed as if it had come from the UK. And they would have to regard the Republic of Ireland and the UK as virtually one, because they say, well, that's a matter of fact, they are virtually one because of all the trade across the border. So what happens then? Well, that is an existential threat to the current processes for the European Union. It would be the first time that such a mighty act of discipline had been taken against one of its members, effectively throwing it out of the common market, effectively isolating it from the very benefits of being part of the European Union. So this would be a country still using the euro, but not allowed to bring goods in and out without paying tax. Big issue. Big issue. And can that happen? Not very likely. The consequences are too horrible. So you can see that even if we did move towards a new Brexit, even if no Brexit actually happened, all parties, all groups of people, all politicians within the European Union would be moving heaven and earth to get a trade deal of some kind implemented very quickly. And all the time there will be this porous border. So I don't think that border will ever be closed. And I don't think a no deal Brexit would actually stop movement of goods without taxes across the border. So that's the reality check, and it's a very uncomfortable one facing Brussels today. It's very uncomfortable facing the Republic of Ireland, and it's a very interesting position for negotiators from the United Kingdom, who in a sense could say, well, we'll just sit back and let them sweat and then see what happens. So by 2040 this will all be historic, I predict. We will see the UK trading vigorously with the European Union, if it still exists, in whatever form it is, and much as it does today, just because of the logical imperative for neighbouring nations to trade extensively across their borders. It's in the best interests of humankind that it happens, and the lesson of history is that since before Roman and Greek times, countries in this entire region have always traded across borders, despite pieces of paper, despite treaties, despite all kinds of military or other means to try and stop the flow of goods and to institute taxes. These taxes tend to get undermined if they're too high, too onerous, or seen as unfair, and that smuggling just continues. That's been the lesson of history. It will be the lesson for the next 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 years, because the UK will be part of Europe for the next 10 million years, by geography alone. Europe will be its neighbouring nations. On the other side is just the Republic of Ireland and a whole load of sea. So watch this space. There's been a lot of fuss and a lot of bother, but common sense will, I believe, prevail, even though there may be a period of chaos which I hope is relatively short.